Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink, episode 14 here. With me, as always, Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. And I guess at this point, weekly countdown to how long until we're without Joe for a little bit. Little anxious, excited, nervous.
I'm excited. I think you've been through this, so you're probably as ready as you're ever going to be, right? One more week on the delivery date's not going to change the whole world for us. So I think it's just kind of the weekly appointments and status updates and how far you're along and all that stuff. So bags are packed, like you mentioned. So we're good to go. And fortunately, it's not a winter one where we have to go through some snowy, icy roads to get to the hospital. It'll be a nice, clean, straight shot. So yeah, we're excited. I had my quote unquote diaper party, which is basically an excuse for guys to get together and have some beers downtown on the weekend. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I will be still on the podcast at some point here, but there might be a time where mid pod I'm pulled aside, and if that's the case, it'll be in trusty hands here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. But yes, we will persevere in Joe's absence. And I'm honestly, it's even the opposite of what you said, where it's like longer is probably just like worse because you're just going to sit there and blow it up in your head as much as you can, where like nothing is going to change, whether it's tomorrow or 3 weeks from now. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And like you doing all the stuff, like getting the car seat put in there. So the car's seat's ready for when the baby's ready,
Yeah.
Although apparently they give you one at the hospital if you don't have one, which I guess if the kids born early without a car seat, they just hook you up with one. So we're doing everything possibly we can to have things set up, but they say the best laid plans, right, don't always work out. So we'll just roll with it. And the hardest part I think now is just figure out the name. So that'll be a game time decision once we meet the baby. So any extra boy names in the all you listeners out there, feel free to shoot me a message on Twitter or whatever, comment on the YouTube channel. Any really good boy. We have really good girl names picked out. We have some guy names that we like, but we're hoping for something better. So we'll see.
Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll just clip that one little part there throw it on YouTube and just let people just pepper the comments. There's going to be some really good ones that pop up there. There's going to be some that you probably won't want to share with the wife, but that's okay. People are out there. I mean, a lot of them probably going to stem from something with the Timberwolves, and we'll get into them a little bit more, but holy smokes, I don't think anyone had them as the team to get closest to a championship out of the big four. Let's lead off with some hockey though. IIHF Worlds continue. I know there's one player in particular that's looked pretty solid thus far. What are you seeing? What are we liking with Marco Rossi?
Well, I think they've been one of the biggest stories of the tournament, right? Austria coming back from 6-1 down to tie it against Canada, nearly pull off the upset. I don't know if it'd be a decade there if Austria beat Canada. But that was amazing. And Marco Rossi has fingerprints all over that. Another comeback later in the tournament. I think he's playing 22, 23 minutes. This is going to be a fantastic tournament for him, building off of what was already a really strong full rookie season. So that's been probably one of the bigger bright spots. Gustavsson's looked good for Sweden on a really good Sweden team in the tournament there. Matt Boldy and crushing it with a really good line there with Gaudreau against some lesser teams. But I'll be looking forward to seeing him in the medal rounds, potentially go up against going up against Canada, going up against Sweden. That'd be really good to watch. So a lot of guys from the Wild participating and doing pretty well. So that's, if you're Bill Guerin and seeing guys, because he's been wanting guys to go there the last couple of years. Last year, a lot of the guys didn't want to go or couldn't go or were injured or whatever from after the playoff loss. But he's a big proponent, and this is how you can learn how to win and win championships if you're not winning it here until you win here. So, but Marco Rossi, just terrific tournament so far for that group. And I always love to see the upsets in these world tournaments, right? It's fun to see Canada versus US, but I love to see a team like Austria just upset Finland like they did all the superpowers that are getting beat by these teams like Latvia and Slovakia and Austria. I'm a root for those kind of guys.
And it still messes with my brain seeing like the awards finalists be announced and then the winner be declared before we get through the playoffs. We saw Sasha Barkov gets the Selke.
Mm-hmm.
Also came out that Joel Eriksson finished 10th in the Selke voting. I'll let you plead the fifth here if you want, Joe, but how do you feel about Ek falling to 10? Like, does that fit? Is it high? Is it low? Or where did you have him on your ballot?
Yeah, he was right around kind of the 5-6 area on my ballot. Like, it was hard because this year you had Barkov and you had Reinhart on the same team, the same line a lot of times that were so dominant. And I'm like, it was hard for me to put both of them in the top two like they finished. I think Barkov was a very good clear-cut winner in the Selke, but there were guys like Lowry I put on my ballot from when, like there's some guys that were maybe not on everybody's ballot that got on there, but for Ek in particular, now that first of all, now that Bergeron's gone and it's kind of a wide open race. Number two, the whole knock on him or other players before was you need to score some offense too, right? You need to produce offensively to be part of that conversation. And he had 30 plus goals this year. So the only thing that I think that's knocking on him maybe is potentially, in the face-off circle and that kind of thing, that he maybe not his biggest strength. But I don't know. He feels a lot of the characteristics of being a Selke trophy caliber player. There was a lot of really good guys this year that had tremendous seasons overall, especially when you have Reinhart and Barkov right off the bat on a top team, both having ridiculous numbers and setting the pace there. But I think Ek was in that range in that 5-6 range, I think, for me at least, because I watch him every day, right? I see him every matchup that he has, and a team that doesn't have a lot of depth up the middle, doing that. So, but yeah, I think eventually, I think he will get the look on him, or he'll get the people voting for him maybe more. He's always been voted for by some people, high as 2 or 3 sometimes, but like this is eventually it's to be his time.
There we go. And the guy that's always been married to Joel Eriksson Ek since the draft, as we spin over to the Stanley Cup playoffs, Brock Boeser having a phenomenal postseason. All for naught, because he will not be playing in Game 7 as we record this on Monday afternoon. Not going to be available for the Vancouver Canucks as they try to oust the Edmonton Oilers. That really sucks for him. But from what I'm hearing, Joe, it sounds like it's not anything that's like too serious for him, assuming he takes the right precautions.
Yeah, I mean, I would say anytime you hear the words blood clot, it could be scary, right? And it's reportedly a blood clot that kind of started in the leg overall, and they just want to kind of manage it and take care of things. And that's why he's not playing Game 7 as of this podcast and wouldn't be available the rest of the playoffs had they advanced. So you feel bad for him because he's had such a feel-good story this year. He's been a tremendous player. He's been all over the score sheet in the playoffs, and considering his background, not just being quote unquote one of us, a Minnesota kid, but having all the, some of the tragedy in his life and overcoming that. And after last year being one of those players that the deadline was like kind of a trade candidate, right? People wanted to think about moving him or like kind of falling out of favor. And now he's been a bona fide star there in Vancouver. So a great season for him that ends earlier than he'd like to, but just hoping he stays healthy and can recover and be ready for next year. So, because he's really continued to be kind of rejuvenate his career this year.
Do you think either team, regardless of who moves on, has any kind of chance contending against the Dallas Stars?
I think Dallas is in a league of their own, quite frankly, right now. I mean, to go up against Vegas the first round and then Colorado there and win the way that they did, I just think it's really, I mean, barring injury at least. I know Hines has been banged up and stuff, and anytime you lose some of the bigger guys like that, it's going to hurt. But they're just dialed in. They remind me, like, them and the Panthers are both like teams that have knocked on the door and are really dialed in, and that this is something that's personal to them, and that they're playing like a team that has that killer instinct. And so I think it'd be a fascinating series. Either one, if they had to go up and shut down the Draisaitl and McDavid, or Vancouver, who's been one of the top teams in the West all season long. But I don't think either team has quite the depth top to bottom that Dallas does. And Dallas still has a really good goaltender too. That won't be a question, unlike other teams like Edmonton and Vancouver, unless Demko comes back.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I, along with, I assume many, had some variation of Florida and Dallas getting to the finals. I had Florida beating Dallas. They looked the part. I definitely am someone who's been pretty critical of the New York Rangers, and of late, I'm getting more and more afraid that they could beat Florida. What's your take on that series as a whole, which is now set to kick off tonight as you listen on Wednesday?
Yeah, Vancouver, I mean, the Rangers have always been a team that, especially in recent seasons, been good in the regular season, and then the playoffs, you kind of question whether they can pull it off. And I saw the Lightning beat them. I think it was 4 straight after losing the first 2 games in the conference final 3 years back. They never really felt like they were a team that could get over the hump. They had an excellent goaltender, Shesterkin, who carried them a lot. But this year, it feels like some of the guys they have there, Kreider was terrific to clinch that series against Carolina, national hat trick in the third period. Trocheck's been a huge for them. If their stars show up like they're capable of, they can certainly beat Florida. So that'll be a great series between 2 really good Russian goaltenders. The star power on both sides, the kind of smack talk on both sides with Tkachuk there. So I think they do have a chance. They do. I think they really – I would still pick Florida in this series. But I think that their power play can come around like it did in that last game. The New York Rangers are as dangerous anybody there in the East. So that'll be fun for Mike Russo to cover. He'll be out there covering his former Florida Panthers and the Rangers. So it'll be a great series.
Yeah, and I mean, a little ode to the guy we're going to hear from here shortly, Mike Rupp. Do we think anyone in Florida has the nails to go after Rempe?
I mean, I think so. I don't think he's this Greek god that no one wants to touch and take on. I think, he has to fight to stay in the lineup and be a guy that he can count on and play. So I think there are guys on Florida that would, I think even Lomberg, the guy who, if he plays in the lineup, he stirs stuff up. But I think that if it has to come to that, I think someone would try. But I think as much as they're going to try to do, they're going to try to play the game on the ice and not fighting, and just because they have the talent up front, Florida does, to make this. Barkov has been terrific. Forsling, one of the best defensemen in the league, a guy that even flew under my radar a lot in recent seasons, but he's one of the best overall and scored the series clinching goal against in the last series. So I much prefer this game be played just regularly in 5-on-5 on the ice, because there's just terrific players on both sides.
Very fair. And as a result of both these teams moving on, we now have the Carolina Hurricanes, who year after year feel like this perennial contender. And here they are again, going home early. And they've locked up their coach now for 5 years in Rod Brind'Amour, which, I mean, hard to blame them for doing so. But you look at their roster, you're not changing the coach. They're only going to lose players this offseason, just given the contracts that need to be dished out. What's next for the Carolina Hurricanes?
It's a very tough balance between patience and trying to find something different to get you over the hump, because they've been one of the best teams in the league the last 4 or 5 years. They've been contenders, teams that have either quote unquote ran into a hot goalie like they did against Tampa a few years back or whatever. The problem before was not scoring. Then they added to the deadline. They got guys like Gensel and to fix that, and Kuznetsov who added it up in there. They wanted to fix their power play going after last year. They did that they were a top 5 power play unit this season until the playoffs that really failed them the first 4 games against the Rangers. So I know when Brind'Amour said they like a lot what they have and they don't want to change a whole lot. Just by nature, they're going to change because they can't afford to keep all these guys, the Martinoks and Nietzsche's and Gensels, and eventually they'll have to lose some of these guys. So, I don't know what the answer is for them, but I feel like there has to be some sort of change, because it's no matter what they've tweaked each year, it still hasn't worked. And you could argue that series could have even though it was 3-0 Rangers, it was a lot closer than that in those first 3 games. It ended up being a 6-game series, which is more fitting of what the play on the ice looked like. But the teams in the East aren't getting any easier, right? The Rangers aren't going anywhere. The Panthers aren't going anywhere. The Leafs sometime, some way will win a round or two.
Maybe.
I think. Well, and the Lightning still holding on hope that this cup window is not closed yet. Boston. So like in the East is not going to be. The path isn't going to get any easier for them, and they have the right coach. They have some good core pieces there. The goaltending continues to plague some teams that maybe deserve better. Like you look at the stats for the goaltending in each of the last 4 years when Carolina has been eliminated. Just look at it, between the Rangers series, between the Tampa series, between this series, like it's pretty startling, the numbers there. And so if it's as simple as shoring your goaltending up, then that's one thing, but something kind of has to change there because they're too good a team to not reach kind of a cup final in this run.
And you tee it up for me perfectly then, Joe. Looking at the other side of the East, Boston Bruins getting eliminated by the New York Rangers, which I would argue that the Bruins overperformed this year. Like they did a great job when expectations were pretty low coming in. We got a Carolina team that needs to move some players off the roster, just given salary cap constraints. And there's some good players that they're going to need to figure out. Boston Bruins, now one would assume they've got their goaltending figured out. It's going to be Swayman long term. There's maybe a deal in the works here to be made between the Boston Bruins and Carolina Hurricanes that yields both of them coming back next year as better teams in the East.
Well, I think other teams like Toronto would look at Allmark too, right? I think there's a bunch of teams that we're looking for a guy he's a Vezina Trophy winner. He's a guy who's capable of being a number one. Or with Toronto has Wall, they want to have him in there, but they don't want him to play every game. So you have another complement, and who's better at being a tandem goalie than Allmark? Him and Swayman were terrific together. So there are some pieces there that could be moved in this goaltender carousel this offseason, not just Filip Gustavsson, that are out there. There's a lot of other goalies that could be potentially available. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that could be one of those fits, and I think it's a $4 million cap hit, I believe, for next season, 1 year left. So and that money will be going to Swayman for his no doubt extension after his playoffs, which was terrific. He was one of the best goalies in the playoffs, and then just losing that last goal was a rough one to give up in that situation. But there's no way the Boston Bruins are even there without him.
No, and you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. When it comes to like, do you break up that tandem that's worked so well together, not only on the ice, but like just you see the relationship that those two guys have, how they support each other. And as soon as you trade him, it's, oh no, now we don't have, a backup option at goalie. But keeping him, you're kind of holding your team back from being able to go and accomplish a couple other things that are clear holes in their roster, which I'd largely say it's just the forward group, right? Whether we
centers up the middle, right? Like who's your number one center now? Like it's just, you lose Krejci, you lose Bergeron. They haven't been able to replace those guys, right? And which is really hard to do. But yeah, like they need some help up front. They do. And that was pretty obvious in the playoffs. And it's hard to pay two goalies above, $10 million. And when Swayman will get from his 3.5, will go up a pretty good raise. And then you're paid Allmark 4 and he'll be a free agent. So why not get something for him that could help you out?
Completely agree. Unfortunately, continuing on the Boston talk track, but also positive that we're still talking about it because Team Minnesota has advanced. They defeated Team Toronto, who selected them in the first round of the playoffs. Oh, that's got to feel good. And now we've got a very different series shaping up. And again, only one game in so far, Joe, but I feel like Toronto, Minnesota, from the score sheet at least, it was kind of leaning one way each time. Like goalies were pitching shutouts back and forth. Mm-hmm. You'd see 2-0, you'd see 4-1, and we come out of the gate with a 4-3 opener that Boston takes to lead the series 1-0. I just think that this could shape up to be a little bit more exciting hockey than what we saw in the first round.
Yeah, definitely more high scoring. And you give Minnesota credit for coming back from a two game deficit to win that first series. I know injuries played a part in that when the Toronto losing the top scorers in the league, right, in this series where goals were at a premium. That definitely hurt them going later in that series. But overall, Minnesota seeing Taylor Heise step up and scored the series clincher in the first round, and then she scored a couple again in game one. The Stars will have to deliver in this series, which could be high scoring, like you mentioned. But it's great, I think, for the state of hockey to have Minnesota kind of make this run, go into the final, hosting games on Friday, and I believe it's Sunday. They're hosting the draft, like Natalie mentioned in our podcast last week. Really good way to kind of break into that first season. But I think I'm going to go into the X this weekend, hopefully to see game 3 or 4.
Love that. Yeah, it's a great start for this sport. It's great to. I'm really excited to see what kind of showing we're going to get from Minnesota fans. Now, I say that not knowing where the overlap might be with Timberwolves. That would be unfortunate if that had anything to say about it. But either way, we are happy for the team, happy for the progress we've already seen in year 1 for this league, and hopefully only more to come next year. But with that, Joe, let's kick it over to this week's interview. This interview with Mike Rupp is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions, all the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us by way of a grand total of 49 games played in a Minnesota Wild uniform. He also played for 6 NHL teams, which is one short of our favorite suitcase, Mark Parrish, and has a Stanley Cup ring to show for all of it. Currently serving as a studio and color analyst for NHL Network and Sportsnet Pittsburgh, Mike Rupp. Rupper, thanks for jumping on with us.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Nice little intro there. Mark Parrish, he's 7, huh? Yeah. I feel like, so I've had the Devils twice. So
do we count that?
I don't know. Does that count as like maybe 6.5 teams? I don't know if you get like some sort of credit for that, but whatever.
That's fair. And but Parrish, right? He's going to come back in and he's going to be like, yeah, but were you ever traded for Luongo? And
that's true. That's true. Yeah, that is very true.
Now, first question we open up with here for anyone that has any familiarity with it is the Minnesota Wild logo and how people are just fascinated by, like, is it trees? Is it a bear? Yeah. We had a player tell us it's a UFO. What did you see the first time you looked at that logo?
I didn't really overly think. I saw the stuff in there with like the river. I saw the trees. I saw those things. I'm like, oh, that's really cool detail. And that took me away from wondering what kind of animal it actually was. So I never really thought about that. But it doesn't matter. It's just wild, man. You're out in the wild. Maybe that's a better way of looking at it, right? Like we're out in the wild, not like this is a particular wild animal. I love the logo. The day I saw it, I still do believe I'm one of them that does like the kind of throwback North Star colors with that logo. I think it's a perfect match. But it's one of my favorite. I got my Wild jersey actually right over here from when I played for the Wild. It's one of my favorite. Got it hanging up. So
awesome. Well, speaking of Wild, our podcast name is Fellowship with the Ring for our Lord of the Rings fandom. I wasn't sure if you had a particular nerd itch or nerddom that you wanted to share. I don't know. I know you Napoleon Dynamite thing back there with Wilford Pedro, but is there like a movie series, book series, or just collectible, anything like that that's in your passion?
Yeah. It's kind of funny you said that. I got made fun of the other day because I'd never seen Lord of the Rings, and everybody was like, wait, what? How do you not see Lord of the Rings? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I just haven't. So it's on my watch list once the playoffs kind of end here. But yeah, I mean, I'm so kind of my nerdisms, if you will. I'm a big Mario guy. I've got like every Mario game ever. I got the Switch now, and they could come out with a new game that's called like, you know, Mario Rock, and I'm buying it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. If it looks interesting, doesn't look interesting, but I love all of, like, the different ones. You've got the different Mario games, and they have the playoffs with the different characters. Like, they have, you know, Toad has his own one. They have Paper Mario and all these different, like, so we've got every Mario game possible and play those. Usually beat the game within the like 4 days of playing, probably like hours a day. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. You know, I like Star Wars. I like Star Wars. Yeah, those are kind of like the main things. And I actually funny, I like Legos a lot too. My kids and I would do Legos all the time. I get some Lego sets of, like, you know, I'll get like the Boeser Lego set and just kind of sit there and just veg out and like do Legos. It's funny because Billy Guerin and I actually share his son and my son were like around the same age when we played together in Pittsburgh, and we would talk about it. Billy would have Star Wars parties. Billy lived in a great house in Pittsburgh, and he had like a movie theater in the house. And I remember he invited Mason and I over to watch the movie with Liam, his son, and him. And we got in there and we had like popcorn and everything. And then Billy comes out with lightsabers, and he hands the lightsabers, you know, really nice house. So he hands out the lightsabers to the boys, and he's like, I have one rule. And you're thinking it's going to be like, you know, don't eat in the movie theater, don't have drinks in here, whatever. He goes, the only rule is every time there's a lightsaber fight scene, we have to fight at the same time. And so anytime the lightsaber scene happens, me, Billy, and our two boys would get the lightsabers and just start fighting. So yeah, it's those are kind of the main things.
I need to be part of one of those watch parties. That sounds fantastic.
That's pretty amazing.
You got to tell me, does Billy have like any costumes hid away? Does he like occasionally pull out Chewbacca or something when he's sitting down there in the dungeon watching Star Wars?
No, I don't think. I mean, he very well may. I haven't seen him. But my nickname with Billy is Chewbacca. He calls me Chewy. And so I remember when we were in Pittsburgh and we used to watch like clips, and you know, say the night before there'd be a clip and it'd show me on the forecheck, and that was kind of my game, right? Like just chip it in and go and get a hit. And we'd be watching the clip, and then Billy would just in the back be like, it was just funny because you know, the whole team's watching and it shows me getting it on the forecheck, and Billy's just like, just start making the Chewy noises in the background. So his nickname for me is Chewy, and he says it pretty much every time I see him.
That's incredible. And I mean, on the Pittsburgh topic, I gotta ask you, Rupper, because I saw this pop up recently. The story about your fight with Zdeno Chara. Just lay it out there for our listeners.
Yeah, so it's the kind of the foundation of it is, it was our first game. I was on the Penguins' first game playing the Bruins since that nasty Marc Savard hit, right? So there's a lot of retribution that wants to be had. I remember it was on the front page of like the Boston Herald, and they had a picture of Matt Cook, said wanted, like dead or alive, like not on the sports page, like literally on the front page of the newspaper. So we're going in there. It was a crazy atmosphere, crazy buzz. Didn't know what was going to happen, and so we get into the game, and Cook ends up fighting Sean Thornton the first shift, so kind of puts that to rest. But Zdeno Chara, being the captain, I think he wanted to, you know, do his thing too and lead and to say like he wasn't good with it or whatever he wanted to do. So I remember he lined up with me in the face-off and asked me to fight, and we were winning like 1-0 at the time. So I said like, no, Z, like, well, I'm not fighting right now. But you know, he asked me like really politely though. It was weird. And he was like, he didn't say like, you know, I've had many guys, they're coming up to you and they're yelling, there's like spits flying everywhere, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, blah blah blah, kick your ass or whatever they're gonna say. His thing was, he goes, may I have this fight? And I go, I look at him, I go, what? And he goes, can I please have this fight? And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, it's very nice of you how you asked. But no, not right now. We're winning. And I said, Z, I'll give it to you in the third period, though. Is when the game's situated, I understand what you're doing. And yeah. And so like literally a shift or two later, he asked me again. I'm like, no, it's still not the third period, buddy. And eventually we end up, I think, extending the lead to the point where I kind of need to do it now, since I've already told him. At least I felt I lined up with Sean Thornton, and I remember he was like, hey, center ice face off. And Sean Thornton leans in with me and he goes, hey, the big man wants you. And I just kind of lean back and look behind him, and Z's back there. He's like, come on. Please. And I'm like, okay. And so then I don't know why he did it. Like I squared off and I had no chance. And, he ends up landing up on top of me at the end of the fight. I was fine. He didn't really hit me in the face, hit me in the helmet. Like it was hard enough, put me down. And he's on top of me at the end, and his face is right here. And he's like patting me. And he's like, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm like, this was the most polite ass kicking I've ever imagined in my life. He's a gentleman. We joked around about it later. I seen him. My son, Mason, his favorite player was Z, actually. And when I was playing for the Wild, I wasn't playing. I was out with my knee injury. And we were playing the Bruins at the XL. And I said, Mason, like, let's go down and meet Z after the game, and went down after the game. And, my son has a picture of me getting beat up in the fight, signed by me and Z, hanging over his bed. So I don't know, take that for what you want. Like my son enjoyed his dad getting his ass kicked. So whatever.
I mean, were you
role models?
What's that?
What, were you a hard ass? Like, does he have reason to want you to get beat up?
No. I'm like Mason. Like, I'm not really sure what we're doing here. But he's like, he's my favorite player. It's cool that my favorite player's fighting you. I'm like, all right, but I lost that fight. But yeah, no, it's all good.
That's probably the most chivalrous way to ask for a fight I've ever heard in my life. I'm sure it wasn't quite that nice when you had the line brawl with the Devils and Rangers. I remember talking to Ryan Carter here in Minnesota about his take on how that all kind of started. Like, how do you remember kind of how that kind of came to be?
Yeah. So, there was build up before this, because there was actually the game before. I want to say to start the game. I feel like this kind of gets lost in it too. I don't know if it was to start the game, but we had simultaneous fights the last time we played too. And then if you went back before that, I think Cam Jansen and I started off the game with a fight the time before that. So it was like there was one fight to start the game. The next game there was, two simultaneous fights, and then there was the three, obviously, to start that one. There was build up there. We started our fourth line in New Jersey, and I don't think Pete DeBoer liked that. And that's how we kind of had our simultaneous fight prior. And then, so now we're at MSG, and Pete starts his guys. And, John Tortorella, I remember him coming in the room, and he's mumbling under his breath and swearing, and he's all ticked off. And, he just says, like, this is our, I remember him vividly saying, I don't know, what you guys, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I hate to do this. I hate to put anybody in harm's way, but he's like, I have no choice. Like, and he goes, because we had Marian Gaborik on the team, and he goes, what am I supposed to do? Put Gabby out there? I'm like, oh God. So he's like, and so he, put me and Brandon Press and Stu Bickle out there, and Bickle is a defenseman, he's playing center. And so that's kind of how all that went down. There's nothing, we didn't talk about anything when we went out there. I mean, it very well could have just had a normal shift. But then we went out there, you could just kind of feel it when you're lining up. You could feel something that all of MSG was on their feet. So I think they were anticipating something. Coaches are kind of yelling at each other off to the side, just kind of set the table for it. But yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed it. Like, it was fun. It's probably the loudest I've ever heard a building. And, it's crazy kind of how it all went down.
And then you've got the more recent New Jersey, New York line brawl. Are they going to get like a full Zoom meeting coming up here soon too to talk through all of it, or is that one a little bit dirtier?
I'll narrate it. I'll bring it. Let's see if we can bring everybody together. I don't know if there's enough boxes on Zoom to do that though. Are we capped out? No, I think Zoom, you can have big meetings on there. So we'd have to go Zoom. Yeah. I don't know if StreamYard would be able to support that.
No, yeah, that's definitely more of a Zoom meeting.
But it's kind of funny. So I did I live in New Jersey, and so I do alumni stuff with whether it's the Devils or the Rangers. And the Rangers were like, hey, we got this thing before this game on, I think it was April 3rd, I think was when that game was. And they said, we have something free to go to prior to the game to go hang out with some season ticket holders before the game. Are you down? Yeah, I'm good. That works out great. And they're like, would you like to stick around for the game? I'm like, for sure. I'd love to go and see the game. I don't know who they're playing at this time. This is like 2 weeks prior the game. So then I get on my phone and I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're playing the Devils that game. Like this is, and you kind of knew from the Rempe situation that things were building, and they kind of already have as far as the games with the Devils there. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is the perfect game. And so I went and did a thing. It was say like from, I don't know, it was like an hour before the game. And then when I was going in, they were like, hey, we have another like kind of meet and greet we want to do. It's just kind of right outside the bowl of the arena, like at the main entrance of the MSG. And we're going to have some people meeting you down there to do some photo ops and stuff. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So I go down there and I'm like, waiting. People aren't there. And they're like, oh, they're on their way. They're coming. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I swear to God, if I miss the start of this game, like, and so then they ended up coming there and I took the pictures, and as soon as we broke free from the picture taken, I turned around and then there's this, the monitors out there, and I see 5-on-5 brawl. And I was like, are you serious? I wanted to go home. I didn't want to go to the game. I'm like, oh, I'm so mad right now that I didn't see this. So then I come walking in and I go to I went up to my seats there, and all the fans, they're like, Rupp, this is just like in 2012, like whatever. I'm like, yeah, I didn't see it. And, so whatever, I was in the building. The place was electric. It was crazy. I don't think you'd see something like that nowadays, but I mean, that there's quite the history there between the Devils and Rangers.
Do you have to buy a drink at all in Jersey, or at Hobby's Deli? You have to buy a sandwich after you win a Stanley Cup winning goal? Like, do you get some sort of cachet from that? Walking around, or like how does that play out?
I mean, there's a fine line though. There's a lot of Devils fans that I mean, that was the team's last cup, right? Like, so they all treat me great, but there's a lot that think once I transferred to the dark side, play for the Rangers, I was dead to them. So, I had that incident in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals where I shoved Marty Brodeur.
Yeah, that's true.
So then it was like I was dead to more of them. So yeah, I know it depends who you talk to, but man, I love both organizations. I hated last year when they played each other in the playoffs. People are like, who you're rooting for? And I actually, all the teams, Minnesota is one as well. Like all the teams I played for, I want them to have success, right? Like, it's tough when they are potentially going to have success or they're running into each other. Like I felt like last year, if I had to hedge one way, I would say last year's playoffs, I wanted the Rangers to win that series because I felt like this was more the Rangers' time to win a cup, and the Devils was coming, and like right now, they're the only team left that I played for. I'd love to see the Rangers win the cup, but then again, next year, if the Rangers got a cup now, I'd be like, I'd love to see the Devils win the cup. You know what I mean? This next year, I don't really have any allegiance that way. It's but yeah, I root for all the teams that I've played for, and some of the teams still have guys that I kind of played with.
Well, on the flip side of that, who's the team that everyone comes at you online and says you hate my team the most? Like who does Mike Rupp hate?
A lot of people think I hate Toronto. Vancouver fans are honestly, they might be the worst fans out there. I just right now like Vancouver, like that team's got a horseshoe up there. You know what? Like all season long. Like I mean, I love what Rick Talk is doing with the group. They have a lot of individual players that I love. There's certain things about the team I love, but like they're not really that good of a team. But they just find ways. Like it baffles me at how they do this, but they're doing it. So I have to start giving them credit, right? Like they're almost like the Seattle Kraken of last year, where Seattle played, and remember at the beginning of the year, for a good portion of the year, they're like top 5 in goals for. And you're sitting there, you're like, this isn't going to last. Like this is going to run out at some point.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't until a couple rounds into the playoffs. You know what I mean? So like you can sustain that stuff for 82. They're an example. So I thought this year, Vancouver's a little bit like Seattle of last year. Like they're never going to be able to sustain this. They did. And, here they are. They're in the same kind of position. I actually wouldn't be shocked if next year there was a big drop off from Vancouver. But we'll see. I don't know. I think Vancouver fans are very touchy, and Toronto fans are. I think I don't know. I said something the other day. It's like my biggest thing with fan bases is an endorsement of one is not an indictment to another, right? Like if I say, I find that with players too. Like this is what drives me nuts sometimes. If I'm talking about how great Connor McDavid is, that doesn't mean I'm saying Nathan McKinnon stinks. That doesn't mean I'm saying Sidney Crosby stinks. Like, guys, where did you get that from? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm like, wow, Connor McDavid, this guy is worth the watch every night, stay up late on the East Coast, watch this guy. They'll be like, let me know when he's got 3 cups like Sid. I'm like, guys, can we just appreciate how good this guy is? You know what I mean? Like, why does it always have to, like, everything's not a personal shot against you and your team. I'm just saying that this guy is good,
Oh, man. Well, I mean, does the team realize that he's good, Rupper? Because he gets a stick to the face, gets fed his lunch, and they just kind of sat there and watched.
I don't know what you guys thought, like, and this got me thinking because, like, I've never thought that there should be different rules for different players. Like, whenever people say that, I'm like, no, get out of here. This is the NHL. Yeah. This is, there shouldn't be different rules. When I saw that, though, I was like, that can't happen. Because it's Connor. So I don't know. It's like when I see it happen, I didn't like it at all. And honestly, I don't know what I would have done. I actually thought about this the other night. I'm like, I think I would have. I probably could have jumped off the bench, to be honest with you.
I mean, you could have asked if you could have that fight.
Yeah, I could have.
May I have this fight?
Yes. May I leave the bench and go jump somebody? But yeah, no, it was. Here's the thing that gets me, and I don't know if it has had any impact or whatever, but the David Pastrnak situation. I love this stuff. Because when David Pastrnak goes out and fights Matthew Tkachuk the other day, yes, I don't want my guys fighting. I don't want David Pastrnak fighting. But there's something to be said, like in a situation where things are getting out of hand, like if a guy like me or a guy that you would expect to respond that way does it, it's still great. It still galvanizes a team. But when a guy who doesn't do that stuff, right? When a guy that's willing to, maybe even swallow the pride of who he is does it, like that's what makes the needle move. It's the fact that David Pastrnak's like, hey, I'll get down and dirty with you guys because I'm one of you. And his post-game comments saying, I'm not afraid of Matthew Tkachuk. I'm not, I could take a punch in the face. The next thing got me where he's like, I'll do anything for these guys. All right, we'll show it. He did. Okay. So when you go to that situation with McDavid the other night, they had Zadorov on the ice. They had Susie on the ice. They Vancouver had tougher guys because, Edmonton had all their skill guys. They're trying to get a goal there late. But it doesn't matter. You still stand up and do what's right in that moment for your team. You saw your franchise you almost got decapitated on the play. Yeah. Like you should be flying in there. I don't care if you're Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. It's actually probably better if you're Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You know what I mean? Yeah. Fly in there and just, I don't know, Just jump on the back of Zadorov, something. You know what I mean? And the fact that nothing happened, if you're going to sit there and wait for Evander Kane to get on the ice, I don't know if you're as close as I thought. You know, like that stuff kind of bugs me.
Well,
I remember, like it's like in 2004 when Lecavalier and Ginla fought, right? It was the most momentum swinging thing in that series. Like no one thought Vinny was going to fight, and then he did, and that was like for both teams. It was kind of like a huge lift for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's the teams that you're talking. The margin of differences between these teams, the margin of winning and losing, is so thin in this league that certain things like that. And some people are like, "Oh, that's hero stuff. Like that stuff doesn't matter. Like that's dinosaur stuff." It matters, man. It matters. Like I know I've been there. I remember distinctly being in Dallas playing with Pittsburgh, and we're getting our rear ends handed to us, and we've lost 5 in a row. And Sidney Crosby goes out there and drops the gloves, and I'm sitting there like, I took that as he's the last guy that should be doing this. So that makes me and everybody else feel like, enough's enough, and it kind of, I don't know. But the fact that he showed he's willing to do it, it wasn't like, hey, like I've played for teams before where I've had a skill guy come up to me and say, "Hey, Rupper, this guy's following me around, driving me crazy. Can you take care of him?" And I'm like, I'm not sure that's how this works. You know what I mean? Like, and it's fine. Like you'll do those things because that's your job and your role, but like, just be connected with each other, and if, if Connor McDavid, or if you're on the ice with Connor and something happens, that's the privilege of playing with Connor. You gotta get uncomfortable, man. The NHL playoffs are about getting uncomfortable. They did not get uncomfortable in that situation. I'm a little concerned. I just don't think that Vancouver's that good, and I think they end up moving on and winning that series.
Yeah, that's fair. And for the Boston, Florida series, like you just talked about different rules for different players. Do you feel like that's what we saw with Sam Bennett jacking Marchand in the face? Like if it's someone that's not Marchand with all his antics, do you think there's more consideration for supplemental discipline?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was I think that first off, I didn't notice that until it was pointed out, right? And I know on social media it kind of got some run. I heard, in the post-game interview, I think with TNT the other night, Bennett was explaining it, and I actually understand what he's saying, but still, you punch the guy in the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whether there's an explanation that makes sense of how that happened, or even by accident, you got to be responsible. I don't know. I don't really think that. I think it's funny from the Bruins fan standpoint to be all up in arms when it happens, because again, you have Brad Marchand on your team, and there's been plenty of things documented, but I don't think none of that comes into play with supplemental discipline. Now, referees and calls on the ice for certain kind of the way that you're perceived by the refs, I think that stuff matters. That's human nature. I don't think it's ever like, oh, we're going to set out to get this guy. But if a guy's flopping, he's not going to get the benefit of the call, right? Like if there's certain things that happen, and I feel like sometimes when you take two gritty players, guys that kind of are dirty, and Marchand and Bennett are that, when those guys collide, I think it's just like, hey, those guys, that's what they do, and there's riffraff happening between the two. That they both want it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that's maybe the way they look at that. But I don't think that was ignored because it was Brad Marchand. I don't believe that.
You have a bunch of jerseys behind you. One is Minnesota Wild, and we all know how rational and patient the Wild fan base is here. We're just curious, what's your thought on the state of the Wild right now? You watch the playoffs and the Stars and the Avalanche. You have a lot of really good teams in that division. They have the dead cap hit still for one more year. Just what's your take watching the Wild this year, and what kind of roster they've assembled at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll ever admit it, because as soon as you admit something like that, you're kind of letting down the standard of the way you want your team to be carried. But I mean, listen, those buyouts really strap this team, and so I actually think this team has done very well considering that. If you did that to a lot of other teams in this league, those teams would be horrible. Like, honestly, I think there'd be so many teams out there that would be very, very bad. I think Billy Guerin, and again, like, I think the world of Billy. So, but taking that out of the equation, if it was Joe, if you're running the team, the fact that this team's been able to stay competitive like they have, and honestly, competitive, they've been more than competitive through stretches over the last few years, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's been great. I think the true test, the true tell will come after this year. And I think that there's a lot of things that come into the equation there. I mean, Kirill's contract's going to be coming up, right? You're going to have, I think they're going to have to show what the future holds. And that's going to be impactful in that situation. And they're going to get to the point here where they're going to be able to get those after this next year, get those off the books. You're going to have the development, another couple years there, what it's been, and then one more year with Matt Boldy, Brock Faber. You're going to kind of figure out, but Kirill needs a running mate. Kirill needs someone else. Like it's pretty one-dimensional as far as how you attack that team, and only one player that scares you from that roster. It doesn't mean there's not a lot of great players doing great things. So I think the moment of truth is going to come after this season. It doesn't mean this season's a write-off. I think this team can make the playoffs. It's hard to think that they can be a Stanley Cup contender until they can operate like every other team financially, and they have not been able to do that. I think it was the right decision they made, the right thing they did. They changed the whole vibe of the franchise, but this is still, they're kind of in purgatory right now, and they'll figure this out after this season. But that's where Billy's job will be judged. The coaching staff, like everything will kind of hit after this season, I think.
Yeah, man. And I grew up a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and you might not want to spend a lot of time on this because I don't think there's a lot of answers yet, but Ron Hextall did a number on that organization. Can Kyle Dubas get Sidney Crosby another Stanley Cup playoff series win?
I think so, because of the way Sid plays and the way he's still capable of playing. I will say this, and this is tough to say because I think the world of Evgeny Malkin. I played with Malkin, Letang, Crosby. I don't know what the summer holds as far as where things are at. There needs to be a moment of truth conversation with Evgeny Malkin and Erik Karlsson. And so the reason why I say this is like Erik Karlsson had the 101 points Norris Trophy in San Jose, whatever, last season, however you want to call it, 2 years ago, whatever. He wasn't, listen, his point production was not anywhere near that this year. It was like half of that, but like he had some moment, like he could still play, like he's good. He's good. Evgeny Malkin, he's still good. Like he still could be, I still think he's capable of being a point a game guy. I just think they're at this stage now where those two guys have been able to play. They are so talented. Both of them, I think, are going to be Hall of Famers. They're so talented that they were able to play the way they wanted to play their game always. And I don't really know if they ever developed another way to think the game. That doesn't mean they can't do it. They're super bright. Like they're very smart. They wouldn't be able to do what they have done if that wasn't the case. But I think that there needs to be a situation now where the biggest problem I saw covering the Penguins this year was every shift with those guys in particular, but a lot of the team was played exactly the same way, which in theory sounds great, right? Oh, that's consistency. But like, no, if the score's 2-0 for you, you need to address maybe that shift a little differently than if you're down 0-2. You know what I mean? Like, and it always felt like there was for the next goal. Well, you got to play the scoreboard. You got to play to win. And that's something that they've lacked. And so to answer very long-winded, Crosby playing at his level, Yeah, absolutely, man. This team could do a lot, but they're going to have some tweak and some adjustments with some of the other star players, because the fact of the matter is they take up a lot of the salary cap. They take up a lot of the ice time. And quite frankly, I don't see that changing. You know what I mean? They're built a certain way, and now they need to make the adjustments in their game to help this team get over the hump.
We have a couple more before I let you go. I know we went over on time here, but one of the treasure in this game is Marc-Andre Fleury, and got a chance to cover him the last couple of years. I know we talked before about Flower. Do you have a favorite Flower story you wanted to share here? I don't know if you involved in any drinks or just overall a moment that stood out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, Flower's just like this innocent being, and he's awesome. You guys know this. You guys see him all the time, and I mean, he's one of the greatest. I mean, I Billy and him were probably my two favorite teammates I ever played with, and I remember we were sitting there and we were talking about old video games on the plane once, and I told you guys about my appetite for Mario games, and we were talking about different Mario games. We were talking about different games on like the regular Nintendo system, the regular NES or whatever, and he chimes in and he goes, "Oh yeah, Super Mario Bros." And I'm like, and it just like, it was like a record, like, and all of us stopped and we turned to him and he goes, "Super Mario Bros." And I'm like, "You mean brothers?" And he goes, "Oh, is it brothers?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, whatever." I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I'm like, "You actually thought it was Super Mario Bros?"
Bros?
Yeah, it was always BROS. And I'm like, that was brothers. And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." Just like, and rolls on next thing. I'm like, I'm so tripped up by this. Like, he just wants to roll on like, "Oh, not a big deal." I'm like, "No, this is a huge deal. You literally thought it was Ross the whole time." So he was dying laughing about that. We brought it up. I did a podcast the last couple of years and brought it up with him. He was laughing about it, but he's the best, man. Like there was that, and then you guys see him in practice and stuff. Like, he'd always mess around doing push-ups, and when we're working on breakaways, doing shootouts at the end of practice, he'd do push-ups or put his glove in front of his face and turn his back and then turn around and bang, make a big save real quick. And he would do it. And I remember saying to him, like, his guys would come down and guys get pissed. Like, guys would come down to shoot on him, and Flower would be dropping down doing push-ups. And then the guy's like, "Screw this." And he'd go to shoot it. And then Flower would jump up and block or save real quick. And he'd run his mouth. And so I said to him, like, "Hey, like, you should do that someday in a game. Like, honestly, like, if you did that, like, you're in the guys' heads. Whatever they're planning on doing coming down here, they're going to scrap that. You're going to be in their head." And I remember he was like, "Oh, yeah. So this was like a little bit later in the season, a couple weeks later, and we're going to a shootout. They're getting the dry scrape. The Zambonis are on the ice. And he came over to the bench to get a water, and he grabs his water and he starts backing away towards the net. And he turns. I remember Craig Adams and I are sitting there, and he goes, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it." And I go, "You're going to do what?" And he goes like this. Like, I go, No. I was just kidding. And I'm like yelling and he's going back. He's like nodding his head like he's doing it. I'm like, "Oh my God, I think he's going to do it." And he didn't end up doing it. I think he was messing with us. I was like, I told him afterwards, I'm like, I mean, if you ever decide to do it, it would be, if you did it, it would be incredible. But if you miss, it's going to be the worst thing ever, dude. Like, and I don't know. So he's never done it. Thank God. I'd be so nervous for him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So, assuming you're a big golfer, right, Rupper?
Golfer?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say big golf. I like golf. I'm not good at it, though.
Yeah, we had a question we always wrap up the episodes with from friends of Waggle Golf. I know Scott can take it away for you.
Yeah. So, Waggle Golf question. Get your waggleon.com promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Rupert, dead or alive, athlete, celebrity, whatever. Who are the three people that would round out your dream golf foursome?
Oh, the dream golf foursome. They have to be real people, like real humans.
I mean, if you want Mario Luigi, Yoshi, yeah.
I'm not that big of a nerd to say Mario. I'm just saying. No, I'd go
Mario Bros.
the coolest foursome, and to the other three to round it off. I would say, I think it would be cool. Kurt Cobain. I don't know if that guy can golf at all, but I can't either, so it might be fun. Just the conversation. Like I'd say, like a Kurt Cobain. I would go. Man, I think I'm probably overthinking this. Yeah, I would go. He'd be my musical influence. I'd go with. I think it'd be great. Michael Jordan. I'm a big Michael Jordan guy, and to see him smoking cigars and talking trash would be kind of fun. And then, yeah, I'd probably go with. I'd probably go with Gretzky. Gretzky was my boyhood idol in hockey. Really weird vibe. I'd love to actually see Kurt Cobain and Michael Jordan kind of talk, and Wayne Gretzky as well. I just sit back. I think that'd be some interesting conversation.
Yeah. When you asked if you could do fictional characters, I'm like, all right, he's going to have Luigi in his cart. He's going to have Darth Vader in the other cart. I didn't know where that was going to go.
Napoleon
I thought, like, yeah, maybe not even Mario, but yeah, I don't know. So we'll do that one next time. I'll do the fictional characters.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you have enough money to be on the course with Jordan?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but no, if I bring Wayne on, I think Wayne would bankroll it.
There you go.
Wayne would watch out for the hockey guys.
Love that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rupp. I appreciate it. It's been a fun playoffs to watch and cover so far, so I'm sure you're going to be enjoying it the rest of the way. But yeah, really appreciate your time. Sorry we went over a little longer today, but had a fun conversation with you.
Awesome, guys. Anytime. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs and Fellowship of the Rink. I'll make sure that I watch Lord of the Rings here before we talk next time.
Yes, next time we'll review how the movies went for you.
All right, sounds good.
Man, Joe, I don't know about you. That might have been the most fun interview we've had yet with Mr. Mike Rupp.
The stories were endless there. Like you wanted to, it felt like letting him go for a while, but then all of a sudden, the Flurry, Super Mario Bros, or Bros. And the best one was the Billy Guerin
obviously
Star Wars thing. Like that's something, hopefully with my little one can do these little Star Wars parties myself and get the lightsabers out. That's going to be, that's a pretty epic one, especially involving their kids too. It wasn't just like, a bunch of the guys playing. It was the kids involved. That's had to be one of those memories you'll have for a lifetime.
I'm just imagining what kind of thumbnail Isha's going to come up with the YouTube clip for that. It's going to be glorious. No, Mike Rupp, always a guy that's been a great talker, great storyteller. And he committed, as soon as he watches the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he's going to have to come back on and talk to us again, which I'm not upset about having that loophole.
Once he has 12 hours on his hand this summertime, we'll get him on in August and revisit it.
Yeah.
Before the next movie.
God, I hope he knows what he's signing up for with that. Like that is a commitment.
Yeah, he can join the Lord of the Weekend with Caitlin and I and the baby, right? So the baby's going to learn early on what Lord of the Weekend's all about. So hopefully the headphones won't be on and get to experience the whole thing, but we'll see.
There we go. Well, let's kick it to the last segment here then. Keyboard Warriors, brought to you by our great friends at Barrel Theory Beer Co. And again, I continue to be wrong. There's still an opportunity for you to purchase Barrel Theory beer at XL Energy Center. Get out there, support Team Minnesota this weekend. You literally have zero excuse. There's nothing better to do. And it is a great opportunity to crush either the Crowler of the Week or Raindrops on Tap. You can check them out at sections 105, 112, 217, and Club 36. Joe, this week, there's plenty we can get into on both these topics. And this isn't even a direct quote. I've got several quotes for both, but let's just open up with the Minnesota Timberwolves not only shocking the world, being able to contend with the reigning champions in Denver, going up to Rip, then going down 3-2 going back to Denver, and everyone counts them out. And here they are, down 15 at half, still come back and win. And I think we got to start it with the post-game presser, which was just fantastic. And I got to ask you, I'll have Isha drop the quote in here so that everyone can hear it verbatim if they've somehow missed it online. From your angle, Joe, the question that prompted the discourse, do you think that there's validity to the statement, like you have to lose meaningful games before you can win them across all sports? Or was that kind of just hey, let me throw that out there and see what you might reply?
Well, the answer was terrific, so I'm glad he asked the question. But I get his point in the sense that even the Lightning that I covered had to lose Game 7s in the conference final and conference cup. He meant losing big games before we went over the hump, and you saw that with the Capitals in the NHL. You saw the Red Wings back in the day when I grew up. But it just came across funny when it talks about the Timberwolves or just like the Wild, like, oh, have to lose. Well, they have to get there to lose big games, right? You have to win a round or two before doing that. Yeah. But I mean, there is an element to, I think, that you learn a lot from losing, especially losing, together as a group and getting to that point and knowing how much you have to sacrifice to get there and how much poise you have to have. And I think the Wolves showed that in Game 7, down 20 points in the third quarter. Karl-Anthony Towns had a huge, biggest moment that he's had in this, 9 years of the franchise, like on KG's birthday too, to boot, to do it. Like, I just watched that, Scott, and I had to think, like, will you imagine if this was like Ryan Hartman and Marcus Foligno, like at the podium going to conference final next year, and people being like, well, yeah, you have to lose big games before you get here, right? And they're like, we haven't been in the first round ever. Out of the first round, so it's like, and the profanity there added to it too, on both sides, on Malone's side, and then I just watched Ant look at his own score sheet, be like, man, I sucked, 6 for 24, or like I was shit, and I'm like, oh man, I hope this is every day. Hope this is every press conference in basketball because it's terrific.
We need it. We need it. And yeah, I just love that. Damn, how much y'all want us to lose? Like, it's so good. And it's just perfectly encapsulates Minnesota sports. I don't know if you saw as well the exchange between Anthony Edwards and Charles Barkley, where he basically leads off by telling Ant that, I'll admit in the last 20 years, I haven't been to Minnesota. And he just says, bring your ass. Bring your ass. So apparently this local comedian, John Savitt, actually purchased the domain bringyass.com and has it automatically redirecting to the Explore Minnesota website. Just brilliant work by him. Have to applaud. Yeah, it's incredible.
Quick turnaround. Yeah.
And like always, the Soda Stick folks waited 0 seconds to figure out, we know that it's going to be get your ass. Here's 7 different designs. You guys tell us which one we're selling. And I'm sure they'll sell out immediately. Man, it's fun. Like it's different to experience actual playoffs for any sport here. And I don't care at all about basketball, but it's still fun. And I'm still happy for all of my friends that are basketball fans.
Looking forward to seeing Charles Barkley walking into my neighborhood. He asked about favorite restaurants like that. I'm sure as hell he'll be at Spoon and Stable or Porzana or Billy Sushi. So I'll have to kind of walk down the street and maybe Barrel Theory for a beer. I don't know. But anytime Charles Barkley is in town, it draws a crowd. And there was a fun story that was brought up the other day too, that Barkley actually crashed the Minnesota Wild rookie party when Jared Spurgeon was a rookie that year, if you remember correctly. Through some twist of fate in Chicago that happened. So there is a connection to the Twin Cities for Charles Barkley, but I think it's great for the city and the market to have that. I think to have Anthony Edwards is arguably the face or the new face of the NBA right now.
He's close to it.
If you're 22 years old, he has the game, he has the personality, he opened to the attention. Some guys just want to shy away and say, I want the money, but I don't want to have to go talking to go with it. And he seems like he's like, bring it. And such a breath of fresh air to a franchise that has had some very guys with swag like Kevin Garnett. And so it kind of brings you back to those days, not the Joe Smith days, but the Kevin Garnett days.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that we have to get into, I'm sure some Wild fans were astonished since they think that there's just unending nepotism happening at Team USA. Bill Guerin's made his decision. Mike Sullivan is going to be the head coach for both Olympic events coming up here. And again, a little bit newer flair coming this winter, but for the actual Winter Olympics as well. There were very, very mixed reviews on this decision. Some people that were all for it, some that were very against it. But before we get into some of those, I mean, what's your take on this? Was this expected or didn't really have much of a thought?
I think it was pretty much expected because he was in line to be the guy the last Olympics on the same similar management group. Him and Guerin know each other well. Like he's a guy who's a proven winner. I know if you're a Penguins fan now, you're probably rolling your eyes because of the recent stretch and people wondering his future there. But you're putting together an Olympic team full of stars that, will have a really, really good team. Like that's a team that has a chance to win a gold medal. You want to have a guy with that kind of experience and pedigree to be part of it. And he might not finish his career with the Penguins or whatnot, but you can't argue against that. He's a Hall of Fame caliber coach, and the roster they're to have. There were some names probably that you could have suggested in that role.
John Hines, naturally.
Yeah, John Hines. Well, he's getting that chance at Worlds right now. But I think that Sullivan was kind of the expected pick from Guerin in that group, and I think there might be some detractors, but it's probably in the minority of that case.
Yeah, and I have been a staunch defender of Mike Sullivan up until really this season was the first year where I've been a little disappointed in what he did. But I think it's a phenomenal selection. Some of the comments that came through, first one that really caught my eye was just a GIF from Breaking Bad where Walt's like having a freak out moment. And it just says Jake Gensel reading this tweet.
Oh man, for every coach there's one that's like, you know what, not my guy. But
yeah,
I guarantee you other guys, the Boldies and whoever are the Worlds, Faber and them would love to play for Mike Sullivan, love to play for their country at that point. So
well, you know who it might be a little awkward for? Sullivan is about to coach McAvoy, aka his son-in-law. Someone start writing the script. That's going to be abused, and I'm ready for it.
Think of all the gifts and everything like that to go along with it. That'll be.
I need all of the meet the parents gifts and memes.
Oh man, De Niro. I have nipples. Can you milk me, Greg? All that stuff.
Oh, it's too good. And then plenty of people that are just going off about this season in particular. Like, what? Why? He couldn't get a very talented team, which, sorry, Adam, that's a big stretch, to 92 points. I guess we aren't serious about winning. All right. One season makes someone a bad coach, apparently. That's awesome. What do you think about Team USA in general? Like in the past, it's always kind of been, here's Canada. Right behind them in some kind of order is, Russia, Finland, USA, Sweden. Is this going to be the first year where Team USA is the odds-on favorite to win the gold medal?
They very well could be. Like, there's no weaknesses on their roster. Their goaltending's going to have a lot of good options in goal too, which can't say that for every single country going in. But Matthews and Eichel and you look at all across the map there. The Chuck brothers. It's just there's going to be so much depth to where you have guys that have to be like Faber will have to fight for a spot, on that blue line. So I think, that's why it's so important to have such an experienced coach who has won before to blend the personalities. And if you're one of Sidney Crosby's favorite coaches and people, you have a good mind for hockey and know how to balance veteran players and really talented players. So that's like the same way I think John Cooper would be a great fit for Team Canada, right? For him getting the call for that particular job. So yeah, I think USA, this will be probably one of the first times that they'll be likely could be a favorite, if that's ever been the case when Canada's still involved. But I think Canada's going to be a bad team. They're going to be really good too. But I would love to see a few of those matchups and before, and then in the early round, and then obviously in the middle round.
Yeah, and I mean, Canada always could put together like 2 or 3 full rosters of forwards. Guess what? That doesn't matter. You can only put together one team. You've got to find the right people for the right roles. So like the slight discrepancy that maybe exists in the forward groups, I actually think ends up working in Team USA's favor, because they've got those role player type guys. Like you said, the Tkachuks. I don't see any Tkachuks on Team Canada. And goaltending is a landslide in favor of Team USA. We're probably going to have 4 goalies that are better than their starter. And blue lines are comparable, but I'm currently leaning towards Team USA's blue line as well. A lot to be said in the next 2 years before this happens. We could have completely different opinions on a lot of these players. Someone might rise, but I don't know. It'd be pretty hard to convince me that Team USA isn't going to end up the favorite.
Well, that's why the Four Nations Cup will be so much fun. Kind of a precursor to that, to see how these teams stack up, or how the role players have been decided and how they kind of fit, and then that could give them a chance to tweak their things for the roster before the Olympics as well. You're not guaranteed a spot just on one roster to get to both. You have to earn it for both. So that's where I think the Four Nations will be such an exciting, even though it's not ideal to not have all the countries involved, to have those teams in a tournament like that. It'll give a pretty eye-opening experience to see what they have.
Yeah, and I actually think Canada could end up being number 3 in the odds when it's all said and done, because Team Sweden could be a gnarly group.
Yeah, I mean, they're always up there, but they have the blue line, definitely. They have the goaltending, and like they won't be quite as deep maybe up front as maybe USA would be, but just never count out teams like that, or Finland in a tournament like that, because as much as they shouldn't always be underdogs in those tournaments, when you have USA or Canada and those guys from the NHL, they know how to play together really well. They have a really good system, and I'd love to see Victor Hedman, a guy I covered for a long time, get a chance at his first Olympics. See with Stamkos' first Olympics, which is crazy to think. Over the course of their career.
Are we saying that there's a 0% chance that Marc-Andre Fleury plays past this next season? Because if he has an okay year, I could see him being like, all right, I want to play one more, because I want to, even if it's the second or third string guy, being able to get one more chance to represent Team Canada is probably something that's high on the bucket list.
I'm sure it would be, but I don't know. Like you have to take into account, you want the best goalies, right? You don't have a limited spot. So like, will he be at age 41 one of the top 2 or 3 goalies for Team Canada?
Depends on your stance for that third goalie too, because a lot of times you'll see that that's like the young guy that you want to bring in and like just give them the experience. Maybe it's something where Canada sees the value in bringing him in just because of who he is in a locker room, right? Like he is the morale guy. He is go-to locker room guy. Is he a top 3 Canadian goalie at that point? Probably not. But if it's something where he's even in the discussion for that number 3, his pedigree and what he brings off the ice could be what nudges him forward. But I'm with you. I lean towards probably not.
I think next year's his farewell tour, and it'll be well done and it'll be well appreciated. But I have to imagine that after that, like you said, that's it for him, which put a bow on it and put him in the Hall of Fame and enjoy pranking everybody else in his life for the rest of his. He'll be great for TV too. If you think Lundqvist is good right now, Fleury would be great on TV.
I wonder if he wants to do that.
I don't know. I never really asked him about that, because I think he wants to spend more time with his family and stuff. I'm not sure what the demands are for guys like that who are on the studio panel versus guys who do play-by-play. But Lundqvist is just terrific. He's like a star in that role on TNT. So And Flower may not be similar in that analytical stage like that Lundqvist is, but
right.
As far as the charisma and stuff, you would add a lot to it.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, you got to have someone like Hank to balance it out when you got Paul Bissonnette basically alleging that the referees are placing bets on games, and that's why they're making bad calls. Which we all know who he is, right? Like he shouldn't take it seriously, but still probably one he wants to roll back.
Well, when you have guys like that who take chances, you love the chances that they take or try to do things that are fun. More fun than the ESPN studio show, for example. But yeah, you're going to have some of those on the cutting room floor that you probably wish you had. But I think the TNT show is great. I love the show. It's terrific.
It is, for sure. Well, awesome. I think we did the thing here, Joe. What do we got here coming up this week, following week? Like, what's all in the content cycle for you and Russo?
Yeah, so Russo will be covering the Eastern Conference Final with the Panthers and the Rangers. I'll be doing some wild off-season stuff, including wrapping up my deep dive on the Iowa development system. That'll run the next couple of weeks here. So yeah, trying to clear up some odds and ends on the off-season front, getting things prepared for free agency. And it's kind of a quiet time. I know it's kind of Wolves country right now, so people kind of want to focus on reading about. I might end up pitching in and helping John, our athletic writer, with some Wolves coverage. So that might be in store for me. But yeah, overall, I'll be doing some wild stuff. Russo will be covering the NHL playoffs, and we'll get it rolling and get another pod for you guys next week.
Love it. Thank you all for tuning in every week. Again, if you're new here, please consider following, subscribing to the feed. Go over and check us out on YouTube if video's more your thing. Otherwise, we will be back next week, whether or not that includes both of us. And hey, for Joe's sake, maybe I'm kind of hoping that he's not, because that means that the anxious wait is over. Let us know, though, guys. We need to know what those baby boy name options are. And, of course, continue to support our awesome friends that support us. Waggle Golf. Get your waggle on.com. Promo code SP10. And, of course, Barrel Theory, whether that's going to be in your near liquor store, whether that's in the tap room, whether that's at the X, when you are cheering on Team Minnesota. Appreciate you guys. You stay classy. State of Hockey.